And now I just close this out. I want to talk about the USFL Draft, which is coming up next week, February 22nd. Fortunately, I don't think it's going to be, we're going to be able to watch it. I think it's kind of being done in secret. Not secret, but like out of the public. But from what we know, and this comes from AmericanFootballInternational.com, is similar to the XFL draft. The USFL draft will be a snake format for each phase, in which the draft order reversed in each round. The draft was shuffled for each phase as a predetermined through lotteries. A draft pool of over 3,000 eligible players will be available for the USFL coaches. Phase 1 will be quarterback selections. Phase 2 will be offensive skill positions, other quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. That's going to be 10 rounds, followed by phase 3, which will be offensive linemen, offensive tackles, guards, and centers, which will be 10 rounds, followed by phase 4, which is defensive front 7 players, defensive linemen, and linebackers, another 10-round system. Phase 5 will be defensive backs, cornerbacks, and safeties, 10 rounds. And then phase 6 will be open draft, any position, which is going to be 30 rounds. Special teams players, including long snappers, punters, and place kickers, have no separate position phase and are relegated to the open pool. The player pool is made up of over 30,000, or the player pool is made up of over 3,000 players, and people have come out and said that there will be 5 or 6 high-profile players that are instantly recognizable on each roster, according to XFL Newsroom. And in a new twist, the USFL could dip into the college football pool earlier than the NFL, signing underclassmen wishing to go pro. The league will allow any player to be eligible if they graduated from high school in 2020 or earlier. This is untraditional thinking, is something to keep an eye on come draft night, especially when the NCAA's transfer portal is filled with over 1,500 people. Now, this was something that when the transfer portal was really blowing up, people were talking about a lot, and it's kind of died down. But it'll be really interesting to see with so many players in the transfer portal. Not everybody can get scholarship opportunities, and just because you enter the transfer portal doesn't mean you're going to find a new home. And if you're pushed into the transfer portal and you can't find a new home because coaches want the roster spot, this is another opportunity for players. And although people are going to say, well, the XFL failed, the failed because of the events of 2020. They were actually doing very well during the time period before everything collapsed. The St. Louis Battlehawks were about to open the second level of their dome, and it was projected to be sold out. I was actually going to try to get tickets to that game. Unfortunately, the global bastard kind of came in and said, no, you're not. And the AAF did fail, and that's because of some controversial stuff of the guy who ended up spending money to kind of save the league, saying, I don't really want to save the league anymore. So the USFL is going to be an interesting thing to watch. Back when the USFL first came around, it did have a lot of success in the spring before they decided to push it to try to compete with the NFL in the fall. Keep an eye out on my US history of the USFL video coming out this week. I'm going to try to get it out tonight, the night this podcast gets released, but it might not. It might be a bigger project. Uh, I'm really excited for the USFL. It covers that gap of April onward of when all of us just want football in our lives. And the USFL and XFL might be able to work together in the long run, because the XFL would probably run February to April come next year, followed by the USFL from April to the middle of July or end of July. And then you have the Canadian Football League throughout the summer, followed by the NFL and college football returning. So we might have a full calendar year of football. Some may say, well, that's going to dilute their product. I see it as opportunities for other players. I love watching FCS football, just seeing guys you really don't hear a lot about compete in their playoff system. I love their playoff system. I love everything football. This is a football channel. It started off as an XFL channel before moving to a college football channel. So I'm excited to talk about this content throughout the next few months. Andrew, I know you don't have a full opinion on the USFL, but based off of the idea of players from the transfer portal being able to possibly play in this league if they graduated from high school before 2020, do you think that's a good thing, or do you think that's a bad thing?
I think it could be either, just because, like you said, I don't have the full idea of what they are. So I think it depends on who they would be playing against, because football is one of those sports where it truly is a grown man sport, where there are select players, but there are a few players in like the world of basketball or baseball where if you just kind of dropped them in the professionals, they wouldn't be as dominant as they would be, but they could handle themselves. A sport that's so physical like football, if you're playing against grown men, that, you could almost really seriously risk injuring yourself and almost ending your career. So I'm certain there's a small handful of players that this would be amazing for. But it's just about, so, I think I could make the argument that it is a good thing as long as everybody has the correct guidance, and, teams won't just accept anybody if they, are honest with kids and say, hey, unfortunately, we'd love to have your talents that you bring, but we don't want to destroy your career by letting you play for us and just letting you just get absolutely injured in the ugliest way possible.
Yeah, what graduating class of 2020 from high school, that put these players around 19, 20 years old. And yes, the USFL, from to my understanding, is going to try to be a younger league. You still have the possibility of playing against a dude who's 33, 34 years old, and you're 19 or 20. It's a pretty big gap. I mean, rookies don't usually go out and dominate. There are a few every once in a while, but it's very different positions. I think you do bring up important concern of player safety. I think for guys like Kenny Robinson with the XFL, who ended up building his draft stock after some school issues led to him being forced to leave West Virginia and just having that last opportunity. He was going to be, I think, a junior or senior that year, anyways. So he still was older. It wasn't the class of 2020. It's still something that's a great opportunity for players that maybe got pushed out. The USFL, I think, is going to have some educational programs to help players who haven't finished their degree finish their degrees as well as some of their workers. It's kind of looking like a positive environment from what I've seen and what we've learned so far. And that goes along with their salary. They're paying guys relatively comparable to what the CFL and what the XFL paid their players. If you're in training camp, you make $600 per week. Practice squad members, $1,500 per week. After active rosters, $4,500 per week. And then there's going to be victory bonuses. It's going to be 38 player active roster, 7-person practice squad. And it's something that like I said, I'm super excited to watch. I'm super excited for more information. The draft is going to be next Tuesday. So unfortunately, unless we decide to push the podcast back to Wednesday to be able to cover that, we're not going to be able to cover it specifically on this show. But I do have planned videos of talking about some of the bigger name players that end up getting drafted next week on the channel. So stay tuned for that. I am all for more football. Give me more football. I always go through withdrawal from not having football on TV between the months of March through the start of the college football season in the last week of August. Andrew, is there any last minute news stories you want to share?
No, but I do want to comment on one thing you said when talking about this. I remember you mentioning how some people will make the argument that the additions to these leagues and having a full year of football will dilute the product. In my mind, I think that's just not true, because you're going to have people who are only dedicated to the NFL. But those who aren't only dedicated to the NFL are the people who can watch a different football game every single day of the year and never once get bored of it. I do it with basketball and baseball. I get that I switched sports at one point, but at one point in the year, but I could legitimately watch a game every single day of the year for one of those sports and not feel like I'm losing anything or that there's anything lost of the sport. So I think that that argument shouldn't really exist. I think that there are some people that won't be dedicated enough to watch everything, and that there will be other people that will eat up every single bit of football content that they can get, such as you, Johnny. So I think that, at the end of the day, this having more programming and more sports can only be a good thing.
The XFL was so fun to watch, in my opinion, during its time period of when I was still in school, getting out of class, going to the weekend, and then turning on the games and just having football on the TV, whether I was fully focused into it or just having it in the background while I was doing homework. Just full stadiums, football fans are some of the craziest fans you will see. And I mean, there's even rumors that with The Rock being at the Super Bowl and all he's done connected with the NFL, that the XFL and NFL might have a working relationship come the time the XFL comes around next year. I think creating more opportunities for players that either didn't get a full opportunity in college or went under the radar in high school and led to them playing at lesser colleges and being overlooked come NFL draft time, to then have this opportunity with the USFL or XFL brings amazing stories that I'm excited to dive into and look into and share with you guys. Granted, I'm a little biased because this is a football channel for the most part, but there's nothing to complain about having more football. If you don't like the idea of it, don't watch it. No one's saying, oh, you have to watch it if you watch any football. Don't watch it. No one's going to really, you're not going to have something to complain about, and you're not going to lose any sleep. And none of us are going to lose any sleep if you're not watching the USFL. So I think that's all I have to say. I'm excited to have the NFL have minor league systems in a way, not playing during the season. The one concern, if the minor league system like this does happen, is these players either going straight out of a regular season into a spring league or straight from a spring league into an NFL season, and injury concerns around that. But none of that's guaranteed right now, and you really didn't see any of those issues with XFL players coming into the NFL. Guys like Taylor Heineke, PJ Walker, Kenny Robinson, names that have done well in the NFL so far. Names we would have never heard of in the NFL had it not been for the XFL in 2020. That's all I got. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We are having a blast creating these for you guys. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let us know what topics you want us to talk more about in this podcast. And as always, remember to embrace the grind.